Tell me about spiritual counselling first. Is that okay? For our audience and our listeners, I'd love to know about that.
Me, honestly, to begin with.
Right.
For various reasons. When I was a kid, I think like most of us, I had a tough upbringing, right? Most people can say my childhood was traumatizing, and probably mine wasn't any more traumatizing than anybody else's, but it was traumatizing.
Right.
And, people say, well, mine was more traumatizing than yours. Well, maybe so to you, right? But you can't really measure it.
That's right.
So the bottom line is I just wanted to run away from home, and I did about 8 times, and I kept getting caught and brought back. But anyway, finally, I left home, and it took me a long time to figure out, Anton, that I wasn't running away from a physical home. I was running away from my own home, which is me. Because I didn't want to look at what I'd experienced. I didn't want to face.
Welcome to the Find Your Influence podcast with Anton Guinea, where we unpack all things influence and we help leaders particularly find their influence by talking to amazing humans and finding out what influence means to them, who they've been influenced by, and who they have influenced. And this podcast episode, proudly sponsored by the Guinea Group of companies. The Guinea Group helps leaders upgrade, upskill, uplift their teams and their influence.
Welcome to the Find Your Influence podcast with Anton Guinea, where we get to talk about amazing topics like influence with amazing humans. And today we've got Dr. Stephen Paul Edwards on, and can't wait to talk about Dr. Stephen's new book, The Venus Flytrap, Sex, Lies and Repercussions. Now that is going to be intriguing. So Dr. Stephen Paul Edwards is an international speaker and author with a PhD. Get this, I don't think I've ever met anyone with a PhD in spiritual counselling. That's intriguing. Born in Blackpool, UK, now based in Florida, Dr. Stephen spent a lifetime exploring love, transformation, and the mind-body-spirit connection. Whoa. His memoir, The Venus Flytrap, is a raw, fearless, and often hilarious journey through passion, chaos, and self-discovery, inviting audiences to embrace their flaws, release shame, and lean into the beautiful madness of being human. Welcome, Dr. Stephen Paul Edwards. Thanks for coming on.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to it, Anton. I think it's going to be fun.
Right, absolutely. So, Dr. Stephen, tell me about spiritual counselling first. Is that okay? For our audience and our listeners, I'd love to know about that.
You can ask me anything you want, man. I mean, I pretty much poured out everything anybody could ever humiliate me for in the book. So you can ask me anything you want, man. The book is a catharsis, really. I wrote it for me, honestly, to begin with.
Right.
For various reasons. When I was a kid, I think like most of us, I had a tough upbringing, right? Most people can say my childhood was traumatizing, and probably mine wasn't any more traumatizing than anybody else's, but it was traumatizing.
Right.
And, people say, well, mine was more traumatizing than yours. Well, maybe so to you, right? But you can't really measure it.
That's right.
So the bottom line is I just wanted to run away from home, and I did about 8 times, and I kept getting caught and brought back. But anyway, finally, I left home, and it took me a long time to figure out, Anton, that I wasn't running away from a physical home. I was running away from my own home, which is me. Because I didn't want to look at what I'd experienced. I didn't want to face the pain.
Right.
So that was a long journey, so I've traveled all over the world, even Australia. I say even Australia because it's a long freaking way, man. It's a long way. It's like it takes you 2 weeks to get over the jet lag. But anyway, I've traveled all my life, and what I realized was I was running away, right? So I would be so excited to go to the next city where I was going to be speaking or whatever. But you know what they say, and you know this too, wherever you go, there you are, right? And so it was something I could never do. I could never really run away from myself, right? Because I'm taking me with me. So anyway, what I would do is I would build things up to what you might, however you measure success, and everybody measures it differently, but I would do well at it, and then I would just tear it down. Because it wasn't really what I wanted, right? I was thinking, well, if I get this, that'll make me happy. And I see people doing that all the time, when I get this car, I get this girl, I get this house, I'm going to be happy. And then they get it, they go, yeah, it's not that, right? And so that kept happening to me. And it happened to me again right just before I met this woman in the book, right? So I was going through my fourth divorce, right? Fourth divorce.
Shit.
Yeah. So if anybody wants to know anything about marriage, I'm your guy, right? About what not to do, right? So if you don't do this, you might stay in the marriage. Anyway, so I was going through, and I joke about pretty much everything. So English sense of humor, right? But it wasn't funny. I don't think anybody gets married to get divorced, right? I mean, we all go in with the belief that it's going to be forever, So whenever you go through an experience like that, it's traumatic. Another part of trauma, right? And of course, I'm repeating the same patterns over and over again. People say to me, 4 marriages, right? What was wrong with all these women, man? And I go, well, let's do that. It's a simple matter of math, right? 4 marriages, 4 women. There was only one constant in all those marriages, right? It was me, right? So it was on me. So when I go through this 4th divorce, and I'm kind of, grieving about it. And I was also at a point, Anton, again, where I burned out, right? So I build these things up, tear them down. I'm burned out. And I was just tired. I was just like, trying to hold on to this image, right? So I'm in personal development. I'm doing spiritual counseling. And just in my own head, there are things you should do and you shouldn't do, right? I'll give you an example, right? So, we teach in personal development and spiritual development, you got to journal, right? Journal. So I did. I journal. I had a mountain of journals. Yeah, you go, right? But probably unlike me, I never read any of them, Anton. I never read anything, right? So I was doing things because those were the things I was expected to do. Does that make sense? And so, and I was very good at it, right? I made a huge income. For me, coming from nothing in Blackpool, some people that's nothing. But anyway, and using the tools and the skills that I'd learned, like Tony Robbins, which is brilliant stuff, right? But those tools can be very impactful to other people, but they can also block you in from you not growing. Because you know all these techniques, right? You know all this stuff. And so you can become like, well, I don't need anybody. I've got myself, but you can't look at yourself from the outside, subjectively. So people used to say to me, well, this is great. You changed my life. And of course, you never change anybody's life. You just help them facilitate it themselves, right? But people say, but who do you go to? And I would think, who do I go to? And then that would just go out of my mind. So anyway, I'm going through this divorce. And I just I'm tired. I've lost the interest and the passion for what I'm doing, at that particular aspect of it. So I'm speaking all over the world, but I'm traveling 4 days a week, every week in, week out. I'm spending most of my life in a hotel, right? Which you do, but you don't mind that when you're loving doing it, right? But when the edge starts to come off and you're not quite as passionate. So I was losing interest in what I'm doing. And this woman came into my life to completely distract me away from all that. And, she became the most important thing in my life. Now, there's nothing necessarily wrong with that, but she became my obsession. And as I say in the book, eventually she became my heroine, right? I became addicted to her, right? To the point where I was giving up everything else to be with her. And it was affecting everything in my life, not just from my own personal, so I wasn't doing the things that made me who I am. I wasn't meditating. I wasn't doing the juicing. I wasn't doing the working out. I wasn't taking care of me because I was giving it all to her, metaphorically, right? And so I began to lose myself, right? And when you lose yourself, it's not always easy to find it again, right? But having said all that, I don't want to make it sound like this was it was traumatic, no question about it. If you read the book, it's like, you can't believe that I did the things I did, right? Or that she did the things she did. It was pretty crazy, right? In fact, I say at the beginning of the book, like, as I talk to the reader throughout the book, right? And I say, listen, you're going to say, there's no way that happened. You're going to say that can't be true. And you're going to say nobody could be that stupid. But it did. And we were, right? It happened, right? So So to make a long story shorter, I met this woman. It was prime. I was primed. I was ready for this, right? In terms of my own, my soul, my spirit, my energy. It was time for me to once and for all face myself, face my own demons, recognize my own flaws, right? And to let go of shame, because I had a lot of shame. I had a lot of, in my young years, I went through a lot of humiliation. I went through a lot of things that you wouldn't want anybody to know that I tell everybody about in the book, which is hilarious because first of all, I'm English, and I know you know a lot about English people, and probably even more than Australian people. We're very private, right? We don't really talk about a lot of things, right? We'll talk around it, but we're not going to get into the real depth of it, right? So for me to come out and share these things, people I know go, what the hell? Why are you telling everybody that? Why would you come out and say this stuff, And so I say, well, look, this was a gift. This experience was a gift because it allowed me to let go of all that stuff. All those things that I was afraid that people would find out about me. Once I let it out, I was liberated from it. Right? Now I'm free. Because before, when you're scared for people to know things about you, you're in a prison, right? Right. You're always afraid of it coming out. Whereas once you say it out loud, it's like, it's not that big of a deal. People are not really bothered anyway, right? They really don't care, right? And also they're inspired because, well, this is what I found. When people read the book, they see a piece of themselves in there. Not that I'm not teaching in the book. I'm not saying, oh, you shouldn't do this and you shouldn't do that. I kind of saved that for my counseling. But anyway, I'm just telling a story, right? And people see that in there and they go, wow, I do that, or I've done that. Because when you don't let those things out, you think you're the only one, right? I'm the only one that's ever been through this. I'm the only one that's experiencing it. Once you let it out, just like a magnet, you draw people in that say, me too. I've been through that too, or I'm going through that too. How did you get through that? What can you tell me? Because I'm in a toxic relationship right now. I know it's not good for me, but I don't know how to get out of it, right? And I can say, well, let me tell you. Because I didn't write the book because I was trying to tell people I got my shit together. I wrote the book because I lived it, right? And now I can help people identify the patterns, change the patterns, so they don't waste, years of their life trying to figure it out on their own.
Wow. Whew. Great intro. Great intro. Is it on Audible?
I'm good. It isn't right now, but I will do it on Audible.
Right.
It's funny, man, like writing the book and other things. Yeah. Some of the things that you're probably really good at are the things that are hardest for you to do. So doing an audio, I talk my ass off all the time, right? You think, well, doing an audio take you 10 minutes, right? Take you like a few hours. And it's a big mountain for me. And I've got to, break it down into bite-sized pieces. But yes, I'm going to do an audio. But right now we got out book one. Now there are 3 books in the series. The second one is almost ready to publish. Just a few things got to finish off with it. And the third book is half written. And I thought, Anton, when I wrote this book, I thought it's just going to be a book, one book, right? But I hadn't realized how much there was, and I've left so much out because there was just. This is an exaggeration, but it gives you an idea of what I'm saying is it was like we lived a lifetime in a month. There was so much chaos, so much going on, so much madness and mayhem. You couldn't keep up with it. It was just that mad. So it's kind of like, anyway, I won't make that right now. But it was a lot. It was a lot. So, and it was a lot of things that are funny, right? Number one, it's very funny, right? Part of it is because, looking from the outside, you're going, what the hell was he thinking? He did what? He went back again? What an idiot, right? And that's true. All those things are true. So what was I getting out of it? I was getting out of it. Well, first of all, I'm a risk taker, number one. So there was a hell of a lot of risk in there, right? I almost lost my home, all my cars, and I went back again, right? So I'm a risk taker. And she was magnetic to me. I drew her into my life for a reason, right? I mean, to me, she was like a master teacher for me in my life. You know, I've told you some of the people that I've worked with, and they've been incredible, life-changing experiences for me, but nothing like this. This was incredible. So I feel like she came into my life for, a reason. And I'm very grateful that she did. I have no bitterness, no resentment, only gratitude that she did. I'm blessed that this happened. And it didn't happen to me. It happened for me. And that's a belief I adopted quite a long time ago, which is also life-changing, because once you accept that you created it, you create it all, right? You create it all. You bring it into your life. You made that choice, right? And throughout the story, you see, I'm making choices. I'm aware of some of the things that are going on, but I'm making a choice to stay in. So, but once you look at it from that perspective, you can't be a victim anymore. Because if it is nothing happens to you, but everything happens for you, very easy thing to say, different to live. And just also to say, things happen all the time. And I don't always go, well, that happened for me. That's great. So what am I learning? I don't go, I get angry. I get frustrated like anybody else. But what's different is with that belief, the time between me being a victim and actually taking responsibility has got shorter and shorter and shorter. So I can make that connection and go, okay, this happened for me. Where's the gift? Where's the learning opportunity? And that's when now you focus on that. And you know this, right? Wherever your energy goes, your focus goes, and that's what expands, right? And then you find the gift. If you get stuck in, why did this happen to me?
Sorting his audio out there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to share with everyone, because you're listening to a great conversation about someone who's learnt an amazing lesson from a toxic relationship. I want to just read you, our listeners and our viewers, to bring you into this conversation so that you understand the book that Dr. Stephen's talking about. It's called The Venus Flytrap. It's a seductive memoir of a wealthy English businessman and a rebellious former supermodel whose love affair spirals from rooftop cabanas to mansion sex rooms and into obsession, betrayal, and madness. At its core, Venus Flytrap is a high-stakes collision between a wealthy English businessman and a former international supermodel heiress. Their obsession blurs the line between passion and destruction. It's set against the backdrop of luxury penthouses, courtrooms, and a mansion with a sex room that became ground zero for pleasure, power, and pain. This is not fantasy. It is a brutal and really clearly told and described with raw honesty and zero shame. So, Dr. Stephen, thank you for that. I just wanted to share with everyone what the book was and what it was about, because that will bring them into the picture a little bit more. But wow.
It was great. Thank you for doing that. I think that helps a lot, right, to people to get a clearer picture of what we're talking about here. Yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah.
So it happened. It happened to you.
Yeah.
It happened.
Well, it happened for me. Yeah. And there were so many blessings, right, in the whole thing. So, I talk about the fact that as a young kid, I suffered from mental illness, that I was in an asylum, right? And the irony was that so was she. So we were mirrors of each other, right? We were mirrors of each other in so many ways, right? And so we had so much in common. We both had tough childhoods. We both had daddy issues, as it were. Right? So, and we both, and this happens a lot, when people are afraid, they tend to control. They want to control everything, and that's out of fear, right? Because if I can control it, I don't have to be afraid of it because I'm controlling it, right? We were both very, we were never accountable. We were irresponsible. We were both these things. So you can imagine two powerful personalities like this coming together. It was like two comets colliding, right? The explosive energy was intense. Which, the controlling thing is what really created the fun. It just made it funny because we were both trying to one-up each other all the time. So at the beginning of the story, when I meet her online, we met online. And there's a whole hilarious thing that went on there. But anyway, I'm going to make this short. At one point, I got her to go on a date. And she only lives down the road from me, which is very unusual because this was an international dating website, right? And she lived down the road. What are the chances, right? So I said to her, finally, I was getting desperate. I tried to get her to go for a coffee with me. She agreed to go for a coffee, right? And that's the one day. The next day she canceled. I'm like, oh no, right? So then I got her to agree to go on a date. Funny way I got her to do that. But anyway, she agreed to go on a date. Now I'm thinking, I can't let her cancel again, right? I got to make sure I tie this down. So at one point I say to her, texting her, I said, we're in the middle of texting. I go, hey, by the way, what's your favorite flower? So she knows I'm going to buy her flowers, right? So you can't break a date when you know the guy's going to buy you flowers, right? That was my thinking, right? So she says, bird of paradise. And I texted back, nuh-uh, mine too. And then I said as a joke, Anton, I said, it's a bit expensive though. What's your second favorite? And she came back instantly, Venus Flytrap. So I got that intuitive feeling right there and then. Woo, I don't even know what it is, but it sounds ominous, right? And so that was the dichotomy. She was this beautiful, beautiful bird of paradise, but on the inside, she was the Venus Flytrap. And I knew from that moment, just the intuition told me that she was the Venus Flytrap and I was the fly.
Whoa. And
so I knew it from the beginning. So the story is so funny because she was constantly trying to devour me and I was constantly trying to get away. And the things that would happen were hilarious as we did this and we acted it out. So there's a lot of fun in it. It's very funny. And it's also the things that I do and the things that she does are outrageous, right? And the fact that we kept getting back together, almost from the second chapter, you're going, that's got to be over. This has to be over, right? This is insane, right? But I say in the book, you think that's bad. Stay tuned. We haven't even got started yet, right? So there's just so many adventures that we go on. But eventually you see that there is underlying all the mess, underlying all the control, underlying all the fear, all the shame. We did have a very, very powerful love for each other. So that's what, in the end, the actual decision whether to be together or not is taken out of our hands. We don't have any choice. So it was very difficult to go through that, to let her go, which I had to do in the end. And, while I definitely wouldn't want to go back through that again, I'm glad that I did. I'm blessed that I did. Because it's taught me so much and set me up for life. And again, I'm not saying I'm cured, I'm, fully enlightened, but I will say I'm further along than I was, right? And that I'm not vulnerable to getting into toxic relationships or relationships that are self-destructive anymore. And that's why, I tell people I wrote the book because I lived it and now I help them recognize the patterns before it cost them years of their life. So it's been a gift in so many ways, right? And it's helped me to be comfortable being with myself because a lot of what happened, what I did and what happened was because while on the outside, people would see me as, extremely confident, very outgoing. My self-worth wasn't there, right? I didn't have that inner confidence, right? And people would swear I'm an extrovert, but I'm not. I'm an introvert. I'm very introverted, right? So, but I was afraid of being by myself. I was afraid to be in silence, to do all those things. And so now it's been 3 years since I've been on a date. And I'm so happy. I'm happy. I love spending time on my own. And I'm never bored, let me tell you. And it's allowed me to bring out all this creativity that's always been there. And just enjoy being by myself. And I tell people now, look, it's different. I'm older now, but I would never get married again. You go, well, you might have thought about doing that like 20 years ago. But anyway, I would never get married again. Not because I'm against women, not at all. But for me, first of all, I'm a big kid, right? I like to play. I like my freedom. And I'm irresponsible. I'll take it. I'll take it. So, but being in a marriage to me, for me, the best part of a marriage is the honeymoon period. right? Where you love each other, everything is great. But once you get into the everyday living with somebody, it doesn't work for me. So I have to accept that about myself. I had no interest in it, the white picket fence, going to work every day, coming home, having dinner, the kids, never interested me. In fact, I was afraid of it, which is why I've never had it. Right? I never wanted that. So when you accept that part of yourself, then you're going to go, why would I want to marry anybody and put them through that? Right? It's not fair, because most women want that relationship where you're going to be together every day and sleep together at night. But it's just not for me. So I'm not saying I won't date. I will date again. But first of all, it'll be organic. It won't be from my website. Second of all, we'll live separately. She'll have her place. I'll have mine. We'll go date. We'll go on adventures together. So we're having fun together. Right? It doesn't mean that you can't share parts of yourself that you don't share with anybody else. It doesn't mean you can't have intimacy, because that's really, to me, what intimacy is, when you know things about each other that nobody knows. But it doesn't mean you have to live together in the what did you call it? The minutiae of life, right? Because to me, and again, I can't speak for everybody, but a lot of people that when they get into a marriage, what I've noticed is they begin to take each other for granted. You get married and it's kind of, well, I got you now. We're married now, so I don't have to work at this anymore, that leads to disaster, right? You got to work at it every day. You got to make sure that they know you love them every day, right? Husbands say, you never tell me, the wife will say, you never tell me you love me. What do you mean? I told you 3 years ago. I told you when we got married, right? They don't get it, right? So that's part of it. And so I've got to the point in my life finally where I'm happy to be on my own.
Happily single.
And if and when I get in a relationship, but because I choose it and I'm ready.
Wow. I love it. That beautifully put. Now, just very quickly on the topic of toxic relationships, which you talked about, obviously that's the focus of the book. For people in toxic relationships, let's help them with some information. So if there's anyone out there that feels like they might be in a toxic relationship, what are, say, the 1 to 3 things that you would say, just Stephen defines a toxic relationship maybe first, and then what do you do if you're in one of those relationships?
Yeah, great question. First of all, I want to just say that everybody's a little different. Every relationship is a little different. Right. So for me to help someone specifically, I have to do like a discovery, right? What's going on in your life. And some people are further along than others, and some people are way back, whatever. But, some of the things that you will notice if you're in a toxic relationship is that you will be giving yourself away. You'll be putting somebody else before you. And you've got to put yourself first. And that sounds a little selfish, but it really isn't. If you think about it, if you're in an airplane and it loses altitude, the masts come down, whose mast you put on first, right? People want to think they're going to help everybody else first. Trust me, when that oxygen mask comes down, you're putting your own on. And you need to put yourself first, because if you don't, you're going to die and then you're not going to be able to help anybody, right? So the first thing is you've got to put yourself first. The things that are important to you, the things that have made you who you are. And if you start to notice that you're not doing those things anymore, you're on the journey to a toxic relationship, right? You're on your way there. And then if that other person is trying to keep you away from those things, that's because they want to control you and they want to take everything away from you, and that the only thing left is them. And then when they've done that, they will destroy you.
Whoa.
Yeah. So it's pretty important stuff, right? So, but it's difficult for us to see ourselves. I think we all know someone who we know is in a toxic relationship, right? And we're trying to help them get out. And you're saying, well, look, they're doing this and this. And they'll say things like, well, you just don't understand them. You don't know them like I do, right? And they're going to justify staying in there because the fear of losing them is overwhelming. And so they want to justify to themselves and everyone around them that the person is a good person and that they're good for them.
Right.
And that they're happy, even though they're not really happy, right? no, I love him or I love her, right? And she would never do that to me. You just don't understand her. You only know a little bit about her, right? You're not with her all the time like I am, right? Now, these are things you're either saying to people or thinking in your head, right?
Gotcha.
But that's where you're no longer in a stable, healthy relationship.
Whoa, scary. I'm very, very lucky that I've never been in one, so I haven't got that experience. So, mate, right now, just very quickly, let's bounce out of the book for a moment and life. Let's just go back a step in your journey. Who influenced you right from the start? Like, you know, what was some of your early influences? Who got you started on this path to spiritual counselling, for example?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, the biggest influence in my life was my mother.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah.
She was my hero, you know, for various reasons. I don't want to get into too much of that, but my mother was very beautiful, very funny, very down to earth, very humble, right? And hilarious. Her sense of humor was just absolutely off the charts. We would be on the phone together, crying, laughing, to the point where it didn't matter what you said next, you were going to laugh, right? That kind of laughter, right? It's just intoxicating. So, and she was very wise.
Wow.
You know, there's so many sayings that I actually include in the book, things that she would say to me that were so inspirational.
Wow.
She would say to me things like, Stephen, shoot for the moon. Even if you miss, you're going to land amongst the stars. And you go, wow, you know? So she was inspirational. My father, not so much. He was very different. He never had a good thing to say, and not very non-supportive. So I had this dichotomy. So that's number one. Then, you know, really, there were no real major influence. I mean, I read a lot of books, I'll be honest, right? So I did read books. But the biggest, you know, the person that I put in the strongest position of influence in my life was Tony Robbins. So I got to work with him, right? And that's a story and a book all on its own, how that happened, right? But it was more evidence for me that we can create whatever we want. We're creating all the time, but most of us are doing it unconsciously. We don't even realize because we don't have specific things that we're focused on it. We're all over the place, right? So once I learned that, you know, I said about going to work for him. And I said, well, if this stuff really works, I'll end up working for him, right? And I did.
Wow.
Right? I did. Yeah. For 3 years, I ended up being the national sales director for the company and on the board of directors, right? Wow. So that's pretty amazing. And so with numerous things in my life, I've been a manifester. I've even been able to manifest most of the things I want. And I've been able to manifest this book and to make it a focal point in my life. Like I said, really, I lost interest in a lot of the other things I was doing that I'm very good at, but I wasn't as passionate about them anymore. Right? And so when I took the time to write this book, first of all, I enjoyed the hell out of writing it. I'd be laughing, you know, on my own, and I'm laughing my ass off, right? And then crying, and then, you know, and then having all kinds of memories. Wow. But then I would just like say, geez, this is good stuff, right? Maybe I should put it into a book and then put it out there. Because I'd written books before, but I'd never promoted them, Anton, because they'd been more like, you know, having a business card. You do an event and you got a book, and, you know, that's kind of, you know, credibility thing. I mean, nobody makes a lot of money by writing books, right? So anyway, but this book has taken my attention. I'm passionate about it. I want to put it out there. And then I can also bring the other skills, you know, the spiritual counseling, the personal development to this to turn it into something that can really change people's life.
Wow, beautiful. Well put. I can use it to change lives. That's being on purpose. That is, you know, passion-driven work. So just very quickly for our listeners out there, and I think there'd probably be people still thinking, gee, Anton, at the start you said spiritual counselling. What does that mean, Dr. Stephen? Like, what can you just give our audience and our listeners just a bit of an overview of what that means, please?
Yeah, you asked that question before. I'm sorry.
No.
Yeah, so what happened was once I left working with Tony, I left to start doing my own events, right? Doing my own things. And I would be doing these events, which were more on the spiritual side than the personal development side. And then people would come up at the end of these events and they'd say, well, listen, this has been amazing. I know it's had a profound effect on me, but would you be my coach or would you be my counselor? And here's the thing, you got to be careful doing that stuff, right? Because you're opening yourself up to legal issues, right? So you need licensure to do it, right? And so I was like, I'm not going to take 7 years to, get a degree in psychology, right? So what I found out was that you could get a PhD in spiritual counseling, and that would give you licensure, right? To be able to coach people. And that's why I got the PhD originally. I never used the title of doctor.
Right.
That only came about very recently because I have a coach, as I do in all parts of my life, right? And he said, so you're a PhD in spiritual counseling? I said, yeah. So that makes you a doctor, right? I said, yeah. He said, well, why wouldn't you use that on your book? Why wouldn't you use that in your business? And I went, yeah, I never thought of it. Right. So he said, well, put it on your book, own it. Right. And I went, okay, I own it. Perfect.
Way more credibility.
So that's how it came about. It came about like many things do, Anton, in a roundabout way. Right. I never set out to have a PhD in spiritual counseling. Right. I did it because it gave me licensure to coach people.
Right. For coaching. I like it. And there's always a reason why we do things, whether it's overt or covert, and sometimes it's not until after the fact that you can really put your finger on it, but for you it was. Dr. Stephen, great chat. We're going to put some links for the books. You've provided all of those. Thank you, and thank you to your amazing team. We'll let people know where they can get the book. Let me ask you this. So like you said, and I'm an 8-book author, which is really interesting. We got another probably 2 or 3 coming out this year, which is cool fun. Oh, and there's chapters from this podcast coming out. So I should get today or tomorrow the first draft of that, which is really, really cool. Compilation book. But what do you hope from this book? Like what's your dream? Like when you say change lives, what do you hope that the Venus Flytrap does for the lives of people that read it?
Right, great question. So what we're going to do is create a community, right? To create a community where people can express their fears, their guilt, their shame without being judged, right? So to give them that same freedom to make sure they don't feel alone. Right? Because that's the hardest thing, right? When you feel alone, you feel like you're the only one, that no one understands you, that there's something wrong with you, right? So we're gonna create a community for that. We're also gonna be doing a podcast, and we're also gonna be doing live events where we can bring people together. So whatever pathway people need, do the counseling, whatever pathway people need to go through that transformation, to let go of all those things, we're going to have them. Now, ultimately, it's going to end up, we're going to build resorts, right, where people can come and have an amazing time and experience transformation, right? So this is just the very beginning of the bigger vision, which obviously is what drives me, right? Because, my team say, you're never asleep, because a lot of them are up in the Philippines, right? And they're calling me, it's 3:00 in the afternoon where they are. It's 3:00 in the morning where I am. And they go, you always answer. What's going on with you? Do you ever sleep? And I do sleep, but I am very driven, because I'm passionate about what I do. And to me, that's probably one of the most important things. Be passionate about what you do. Make sure that it's, positively impacting other people. And it doesn't have to be on a big scale. It could be anything, you just knowing that your life has made a difference in the life of someone else is what fulfills us. It's not material things. You'll never be full. There'll never be enough. And it will always be something else that you need in order to make you happier. Trust me, I know, right? I've been there, right? So, and there's an old saying, and you probably heard it, I'm sure you have, right? Less is more.
Yeah.
So actually possessions, the word is possess. They possess you because they take energy. They take energy for you to get them, and they take energy for you to keep them. And if you don't give them energy, they will disappear.
Wow.
So you're only keeping around you the people and things that you believe are important to you, which in most cases are not, right? They're just helping to create a facade, right? That you feel like you need to keep up to protect yourself. But really what they do is they put you in prison, right? Because you're pushing back the real world to try and feel safe.
Wow.
So nobody can find out who I really am. No one can find me in here. What they're going to see is what I put out here, and that's who they think I am. And that happened to me. So many times I'd finish an event and people come up to me, they didn't say this exactly, but they'd say something like, man, you got your shit together, right? So, you know what I mean? And so you're a great person and blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking, you have no idea who I am. What you've seen is an image on a stage. That's not who I am, So don't be fooled by that. That's somebody trying to help you, guide you into doing things that can definitely help you. But that's not a real person, right? That's not a real person. It's an image. It's a facade. So, which is a good thing in a way, because I don't get caught up in, people telling me I'm amazing or anything like that. I know that, they see it's not a real thing. But yeah, so that has helped me to realize that being who you really are. I used to do an event called the Ultimate Dare.
Oh,
it's called the Ultimate Dare, and there were a lot of daring things we do in that, including skydiving, and we get people out on the ropes courses and all that. But the Ultimate Dare, as I explained, is being who you really are in the presence of others.
Wow.
And that is the greatest fear.
Absolutely. Being exposed, being judged, being rejected as,
Yeah.
Wow.
So at the end, and Tony talks about this. No one can ever really reject you. They can just reject an idea, right? But they can't reject you. You are who you are. And what you will find, though, is that, and this is perfectly okay, and it's part of nature. Some people will like you and some people won't.
That's right. Yes, that's right.
And that's perfect, because then we can all find what we want.
We're not for everyone, which was quite the shock to my system when I learned that when I went into business 20 years ago. I thought, what? Really?
Yeah.
There's some people that don't like me. Oh, I'm offended. How could they not?
I love what Ricky Gervais talks about when he talks about that. And he goes, "No, I didn't offend you."
Yeah, that's right.
You just made up in your head, right?
Exactly right. Well said.
Yeah.
Dr. Stephen, I think we should wrap this up, and we'll.
I just want to say one thing.
Please, I was going to say. Yeah.
I sent you, or my team sent you, 2 links, right? One is to get the first 3 chapters of the book free, right? So your audience can read the first 3 chapters, see if they like it, without having to buy it. And if they want, they can buy it. And then the other thing is I've done a special thing for your clients, your audience, to say, look, if you think that, having listened to me and you feel like it might resonate, I'm offering, and I can't do this for everybody, right? Because there's only so much time I have. But I've made it for a limited time, a limited number of people. If you would like to spend 30 minutes with me on a phone call for free, I'll give you a complimentary coaching session. We'll do a little bit of a dive into what you might want to work on, and if we resonate, we can take it from there.
Wow, that's such a great offer. Thank you so much, Dr. Stephen. We will. Now, is there a link to your calendar to book that? Like, how do our...
Yeah, so that once they go to the link, it will take them to a calendar to book that in.
Done. We will put that out. Let me wrap up and we'll come back and close this out. Team, you've just been listening to Dr. Stephen Paul Edwards. Whew, what a great conversation. I'm just going to go straight and buy the book, which I usually do. I've had too many other books to read before this, because everyone that comes on and has got something for me to read or prepare. But I cannot wait. I'm intrigued now by the Venus Flytrap, and I hope you are too, because Dr. Stephen just talked about this life of 4 divorces, of childhood trauma, of being burnt out into adulthood, of meeting someone obviously who stole his heart in a good way, but also probably had a really negative effect on his life, but which he's turned into a real positive. And he said that relationship happened for him, not to him. And I guess the lessons from that are really what drove this passion project of a book. And the words toxic relationships came up. And so as I said to Dr. Stephen, I've never experienced that. So I'm really, really lucky and probably grateful to the universe that I haven't experienced it. But if you have, and I know there are people out there that there's a thing in Australia, and the words that were in my mind are coercive control. That's law now in our country, I believe. So, and Dr. Stephen was good enough to share some of his time now with our listeners and our viewers. So please take Dr. Stephen up on that. I think that would be an amazing opportunity for everyone. And obviously, you might even want to jump on a coaching relationship with Dr. Stephen, who would be amazing based on all of the things that Dr. Stephen's learnt throughout his life. And what I really loved about the way that this podcast ended was it was be passionate, have a positive impact on the world, do what fulfills you, and at the end of the day, take on the ultimate dare, which is to be yourself in front of others. And that is a phenomenal challenge to all of us, I think. And, it's just been such a great conversation. I'm so grateful for Dr. Stephen Edwards all the way from Florida, the United States, where it's probably evening over there. Like Dr. Stephen said, he probably works day and night. I'm a bit the same. And it's early in the morning. Well, it's not really early. It was 6 o'clock when we started. But, the modern technology allows Dr. Stephen and I to get together. Dr. Stephen, anything else for our viewers and our listeners?
I would just say one other thing, and that is we talked about it actually, just to leave people with something they can apply immediately. They can have a profound effect. Like I said, I adopted the belief that nothing happens to you, everything happens for you. And I can tell you that's changed my life in so many ways. And I use that belief just about every day. So something occurs in my life on a daily basis. Most people can relate. That sucks, right? You go, oh my God, right? How? Oh no. And you get frustrated. I get frustrated too, right? But like I said, the time between that happening and me being frustrated and then realizing, okay, why did that happen? What gift is in that? Gets shorter and shorter. So I spend less and less time in that stressful, frustrated, angry state and not being a victim. If you think it happened to you, you're just in victimhood. And that's an endless loop. You're never going to get anywhere.
Dr. Stephen Paul Edwards, what a great message to leave it on.
Thank you for listening or viewing our Find Your Influence podcast with Anton Guinea. Another great chat. Please be one of the 10% of people who follow and subscribe and like our videos so that you can get more of them and you can hear more of our amazing conversations, the conversations that I get to have and that I get to share.